Drones have become the new frontier in modern conflicts. We've seen it in the Russia-Ukraine war and now in the Middle East. And because a drone is essentially a flying computer, the line between cyber and air defense has disappeared. At the same time, AI-driven cyber threats have accelerated, forcing countries to rethink how they protect themselves. It is in this environment that collective defense was formed, bringing together cyber intelligence, threat monitoring, and counter-drone capability under one organization. My guest today is Arno Robbertse, CEO of Collective Defense. He spent his career at the intersection of cyber and intelligence and national resilience, and is driving this new company now. Arno, welcome.
Thank you very much, Linda, and thank you very much for having me on the show. As you say there, we've worked really hard to combine different aspects of cyber defense into this new business, Collective Defense. Because what we really saw from operating at the coalface of cybersecurity and national resilience for many years is that the attackers operate at these seams between our organizations, between allies, between departments, between budgets. They have no respect for our own organizational charts. So what we really set out to do to create with Collective Defense is to build an organization around our customers' actual problems rather than our own structures or industry norms.
So what do they each bring to the table, these three companies? Because Asterion is also part of the new Collective Defense.
Exactly right, Linda. So with the three businesses we've combined to create Collective Defense, ITC Secure is our cybersecurity services side and our 24-hour operations center. They are the human watch, the threat intelligence, the network defense, the analysts, the boys and girls working around the clock to monitor and detect attacks coming in against our clients. IronNet is the cyber technology side, and it's also the home of Collective Defense concept that has given our new company its name. It's the idea that an entire network can learn from an attack coming into just one node in the network and instantly protect the rest of the entire network and all the networks connected to it in near real time. So by putting these two businesses together, we are effectively combining the engine room and the operators all in one place to reduce the response time and the effectiveness of the response. But really the deeper reason is much simpler than technology. We kept seeing the same customers, governments, energy operators, critical infrastructure, face these threats that, as I said, don't respect or acknowledge our internal organizational charts. The attackers don't care which part of our product line is supposed to handle their incoming attack. So we built this organization around the customer's actual problems rather than around our own structures. And bringing in Asterion's counter-drone capability is really just a natural next step in that same logic.
Well, from the business to what countries are actually facing now. So, if cyber, drones and missiles are no longer separate issues, what does it mean in practice of how countries defend themselves?
In practice, what it means is you can't defend in separate buildings. You can't defend with separate vendors watching separate screens. A capable adversary will probe your networks. They will jam or spoof your sensors. They'll launch a physical strike inside that same window, sometimes even within minutes. And if your cyber defense team and your air defense team only meet once a quarter at the review meetings, the attacker will live in those gaps, in the gaps between these teams. So therefore, to be able to defend as one chain means a single operating picture where the cyber signals and the radar track resolve into a single view, shared command and control, and we have clear rules of engagement that span both of those domains. This also means that our procurement has to change. Buying point solutions from a dozen different suppliers and asking them to wire them together afterwards recreates exactly what the enemy is looking for. He's looking for those gaps and those seams in our operations and in our detections. The integration cannot be an afterthought. It has to be a starting point. And it's really in those gaps where we are decided to intelligently and very purposefully build Collective Defense.
You're a private company. If we look at Ukraine and the war that was going on there, so what did the war teach us about combining these two elements? Have they done it, on a government level, and you are now offering something similar on a private sector level?
Exactly that, Linda. I think what we saw in Ukraine is that it was one of the most demanding proving ground in modern warfare. And it's also the clearest lesson for us that these domains between physical and cyber have to be fused. We saw Russia use electronic warfare to disrupt, divert, and compromise drones, at times pushing them off course and into allied airspace. So what looks like a counter-drone problem is simultaneously a cybersecurity problem, and an electronic warfare problem, a command and control problem. And the side that infused this electronic warfare, kinetic and cyber effects into a single operating picture is a side that'll hold the initiative. And the second lesson we saw in Ukraine is around cost. You cannot sustain a war of attrition by spending millions of dollars to bring down $1,000 drone. Ukraine has taught everyone to push detection and intelligence as far forward and as cheaply as possible, and to reserve your expensive interceptors and effectors for the threats that genuinely warrant them. And that's where Asterian systems are proven exactly in that environment, which gives them a great credibility that no test range can afford them.
Well, in the Middle East, the salvos there and the billion-dollar defense effort required to stop them has sort of raised questions about the effectiveness of traditional air defenses. So what do they tell us about the limits of even the most advanced layered defense systems?
Yeah, they were certainly a wake-up call around the arithmetic as much as the engineering. The interceptors largely worked very well, but the exchange ratio is unsustainable. When it costs far more to stop a threat than to launch it, an adversary can simply keep firing at you until you run out of magazine or run out of money. And that's a structural limit for even the most excellently layered defense. It is reactive, and it is most expensive at the very top of the stack. So the answer is not to abandon those systems. The answer is to add cheaper, earlier layers beneath them, better detection, electronic and cyber effects, and lower cost interceptors, so that the premium missiles become the last resort rather than the first response. And it tells us that resilience matters just as much as interception. You have to assume that the attackers will leak through and harden the infrastructure so that a single hit is disruptive rather than catastrophic. Defense and resilience are two sides of the same coin. I think the other interesting thing we saw in both Ukraine and Middle East is that these incoming drones, they don't just target the front lines anymore. They don't just target the hardened military installations and frontline soldiers. They go after the infrastructure that our normal everyday life and civilization depends upon. It is energy substations. It is hyperscaler data centers. It is water sanitation plants. It is the hospitals that get targeted. So being able to defend against these targets have a meaningful impact in preserving everyday life and civilization in our allied territories.
So is this the place where Western governments and the Middle East now are most vulnerable when it comes to infrastructure?
Yes, I think there's a few things. So one is we remain most vulnerable at those seams, the seams between cyber and physical, between different agencies, between allies. Our defenses are often excellent in their silos, but they're weakest exactly where they're supposed to meet. I think secondly is that area that I mentioned of critical national infrastructure, which typically is in private hands. The grid, the ports, the telecoms, the water, they're mostly run by commercial operators who are never resourced and mandated to defend against state-level threats. And then thirdly, the speed of acquisition. The threat against us iterates in weeks, whilst still big parts of our procurement runs on yearly cycles or even multi-year cycles. And our adversaries understand all three of these domains and these weaknesses, and they design their attacks around them. The encouraging thing is that we've been closing the gap. Closing the gap is less about creating an exotic new technology and more about the integration, the shared situational awareness, and giving the private sector the means and the mandate to defend the infrastructure it actually operates.
So when you look at warfare at the moment, and especially drones, you've mentioned when we talked that it's a cat and mouse game. So just tell me more about that.
Exactly, and it's a constant battle between the defenders determining the best cost-effective strategies to combat against the incoming drones, and then the attackers adapting against that. A very practical example of that is how the defenders have been using spoofing and jamming and taking over on the radio frequency links and the radio frequency communication to take over the control of incoming drones and go and land them somewhere safe. And now on the attacker side, for them to get around that, they now commonly connect fiber optic cables. Tens of hundreds of kilometers of fiber optic cable gets physically connected to a drone so that its communication cannot be interrupted or intercepted because it's a physical connection between the controller and the drone going in. You can see these images from the fields in Ukraine where it's a spider web of fiber optic cables strewn over the battlefield, each one corresponding to a drone that had been sent across, and that's why certainly in some of the strategies we're working on is to actually to take out the incoming drone, so to actually physically intercept it and take it out of the sky a safe distance away from it reaching its target. That's also why early detection through advanced radars and some advanced detection techniques is so critical in building a coherent defense, so that we can launch the interceptor and combat the incoming drone in good time.
That's interesting, because where Elon Musk Starlink came in, he was able to, for certain attacks, switch off so that the drones couldn't be used. So when they start planting fiber optic cables, that means you don't have the power to do that anymore.
It's as you said, and it's a constant cat and mouse between the attackers innovating and the defenders responding to that. We saw that again in the area of the speed of the drones, where as soon as the defenders launch something that's faster than the attackers and can chase it down, then the attackers innovate and they enhance with the propulsion and the amount of fuel it carries and how it's propelled. So it's an area that needs constant innovation and constant research and development if we're going to stay one step ahead.
You've described the electromagnetic spectrum as a new battlefield. So for people outside the defense world, why is this important?
Everything, almost everything modern depends on invisible signals. GPS for navigation and timing, radio waves that link and control drones, the frequencies that our mobile phones depend on, and often even the power grid quietly relies on. This electromagnetic spectrum is the medium all of the information travels through, and it's become a contested territory. If you're able to jam, spoof, or listen into signals, you could blind a sensor, you could take control of a drone, you could knock out the timing that a financial system or the energy grid depends upon, all without needing a single explosion. The simplest way to put it for anyone outside of our industry and our world is whoever controls the spectrum controls whether your machines can see, talk, and navigate. And that is why this contested battlefield in the electromagnetic spectrum sits alongside the traditional spectrums of war of land, sea, air, cyber. And this is a domain that is now greatly contested, and a great deal of modern conflict is decided well before any shot is ever fired.
Is there a reason why you have based this company in Luxembourg?
We've seen great support and a great strategic partnership from the government and the Ministry of Defense at Luxembourg. Luxembourg's seat in NATO and as part of the rearming of Europe continues to play a strategic role in global national security and national resilience. We also see Luxembourg's ability to access private capital as absolutely necessary in driving this need for innovation and improvement in lower cost defectors and receptors in the drone space.
If there's a core message you want governments and critical infrastructure operators to understand right now, what would that be?
It'll be the focus on resilience, and building effective and lasting defenses against what is going to be an evolving and rapidly innovating threat coming in against us.
If that doesn't happen, what would the environment look like if you can't bring all these together?
Well, that it's pretty simple. It would look like somebody, an attacker who is fast, operating with very cheap materials, quite well coordinated, against an opponent who is slow, whose technology is expensive and is very fragmented. And an adversary will open with cyber and electronic warfare that blind senses and sows confusion. That follows then with a mass low-cost drones to saturate the defenses, and keeps a few precision strikes to reserve for the targets that really matter to them. And all of that is aimed at infrastructure that civilians depend upon, rather than hardened military targets. And as defenders, if we keep organizing ourselves in silos and burn through expensive interceptors early, we lose our situational picture because of the fragmented nature of our monitoring and our defenses, and we only discover these gaps between our agencies and our allies in real time when we're under fire. That cost ultimately falls on civilians. That means disruptions to power, to our heating, to our water being taken out, hospitals going under strain in the middle of winter, and we've recent previews of this in Ukraine and the Gulf. And this is the real danger, is treating these situations we're seeing as one-off events, rather than recognizing them as a shape of things to come.
Well, if an investor comes to you, why should they invest in collective defense?
What we've seen in our round with acquisition of Asterion is that we've really been inundated by investors who want to be strategic partners, investors who want to be clients of the group, who acknowledge and identify the need for the consolidated collective approach to cybersecurity, information warfare, and protection in the physical domain, and want to partner with us for the long term, to be clients, to be partners, to grow into new regions, and to have ultimately a financial return from the difference they're making. But really for us, what success looks like for us is really, it's the first thing that'll change is time. With cyber signals and radar track that happen on land, can be visible on the same screen. Warning arrives earlier and decisions get made in seconds, rather than being relayed between teams that only see half of the threat. We really see that as a big win and a massive way, a massive step forward. The second thing that what winning looks like for us is cost. Cheaper detection with layered effects means you can stop spending premium interceptors on cheap threats. The economics finally begin to swing in the favor of the defender, instead of right now everything is all the economics are in the favor of the attackers. The third is confidence. The operators of critical infrastructure stop treating cyber and physical security as separate budgets, and two separate problems, but start buying one capability that they can actually rely on. And this is particularly important for that segment of critical infrastructure operated by private companies. But then there's the human measure, and that's the one that I really care about most myself. It's the fact that if we do our job right, the apartment block is still there in the morning with its lights on. The hospital keeps working with power throughout winter. The family can keep sleeping soundly through the threat that was found in the dark and stop before it arrived at their door. And that's what success looks like for us. And that is our mission.
So are you basically aiming this at governments, or when you talk about infrastructure companies, wouldn't they say, but the government has to defend us?
Our solutions and our business is dual focused. So we both help governments, mainly protecting borders and or high risk areas. But then because of the shared responsibility, critical infrastructure need to take some responsibility for protecting themselves and their own supply chains. So therefore, our solutions is both aimed at combining cyber information and physical protection, but also combining and building a bridge between the public and private sectors, so that we can all protect together. it's the concept of neighborhood watch. It's a concept that we are stronger and more secure because our neighbors are stronger and more secure, because our community, because our town, our province is better protected. We in our own homestead and our own four walls are better protected too.
Oh, Arno Robbertse from Collective Defence, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Linda. It was a pleasure to speak to you today.